Watch a cocky snowflake confront and try to disrupt and throw out Ben Shapiro's entire speaking event, only to get reprimanded and then kicked out like the little baby he was. Guys, this is gonna be a great video. I know you're gonna like it. This guy makes an absolute fool out of himself. It's insane. It is quite a spectacle. So we're gonna get right into it. But first, everybody, do me a big favor here. Drop us a like and comment below so we can keep bringing you guys this great content. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Darian, and this is Resist the Mainstream. And I'll give you all a heads up, it is an older video, but it is so great, I just had to show it to you.
On slavery to its benefit, and that even those who didn't benefit from slavery indirectly benefited from slavery. But there's only one problem with this claim. It doesn't make sense. Slavery was, of course, a very important part of the American economy, but it was also the most backward part of the American economy. Free labor is more economically efficient than slave labor. There's a reason that Alexis de Tocqueville, touring the United States in 1835, described the South as a society, quote, gone to sleep. In fact, the growth of the Southern economy remained slow all the way from basically the beginning of the Republic through the Jim Crow period, because during slavery it was slow because it was all agricultural and because it wasn't using free alienation of labor. And then it was slow because of Jim Crow. And then after Jim Crow, suddenly the Southern economy starts to boom, and you start to see a net migration back into the South after the end of Jim Crow. During Jim Crow, black citizens are fleeing to the North and bringing with them the intensive human capital that they bring with them, right? They make Detroit rich, for example. Instead, after the end of Jim Crow, people start moving back to the South. So the idea that Jim Crow made places richer, made the American economy richer, or that slavery made the American economy richer is obviously untrue. If slavery had been an economic winner, dude, don't worry, there's Q&A. If you want to be the first person in the Q&A. If you want to be the first person in the Q&A, it can be you. Okay.
Does this guy strike you as a manly guy? Look, at the end of the day, physiognomy rules the day. That's all I can say. And the way he's dressing, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Okay, you're perfectly welcome to ask a question. If slavery had been an economic winner, the South wouldn't have been roundly defeated by the industrialized North. The end of slavery meant a drop in agricultural capital in the United States and a massive uptick in industrial and housing capital, as well as in other domestic capital, according to far left economist Thomas Piketty. Our labor stock soared, our capital stock soared in the aftermath of the Civil War. Dude, like really, you can ask a question, I promise. You can be the first person to ask a question. You can...
ridiculous speech that he's making. Where's my free speech?
Your free speech is during the Q&A, dude. I mean, like...
During the Q&A. I believe that I should have free speech now.
Well, nobody hired you to come up here and talk. So if you want to convince somebody to hire you to talk... It is economic illiteracy to suggest that America's economy is rooted in slavery. We are a highly industrialized economy. We have been for more than a century. And even when we were an agricultural economy, slavery was an economic drain on everyone other than slaveholders themselves. This means that the authors of the New York Times 1619 Project are forced into the unenviable position of blaming slavery for America's prosperous system of free market capitalism, which requires a hell of a trick, since free market capitalism is precisely the opposite of forced labor. So we end up with the absurd spectacle of Matthew Desmond suggesting that the quote-unquote brutality of American capitalism is modeled in slavery.
Terrible speech, Ben.
Okay,
what a guy. Oh, man.
Honestly, I've offered the opportunity for this gentleman to be first in the Q&A line, and now he's actually just disrupting the ability of everybody else to hear the speech.
To Shapiro's point about slavery, I think it's worth also pointing out that a very small percentage of white Americans actually owned slaves. You can look at data gathered from the 1860 US Census, for example, which found that all of less than 2% of white people in the United States were slave owners. Now, a lot of leftists will try to revise history and lie about this and say this isn't true and say, oh, actually, 25% of households own slavery and you have to only pick the houses in the southern states because they're the ones where slavery was legal. It's very important to remember that slavery was actually being practiced in the North after the Civil War started in 1860. A lot of people don't realize this, but it is true, or 1861. In fact, the Emancipation Proclamation that people always talk about, Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves, that didn't even happen until over 2 years after the Civil War started, all while states of the Union, the North, were actively practicing slavery, even if it was banned, by the way. It was, in many cases in the northern states, slavery was banned on the books, but they gave the states about 30 to 40 years to phase it out. In other words, slavery really wasn't banned in much of the North while the Civil War was going on. Bet you didn't learn that in public school. I know I didn't. If you guys are enjoying this content and want to see more hard-hitting facts like this, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. I mean, guys, come on, look. I'm wearing a Resist the Mainstream t-shirt, okay? And we've got this beautiful mug. You got to subscribe to our channel, all right? We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. God bless.
Honestly, I have a 3-year-old who disrupts this way. Proponents of the view that slavery is the root of economic inequality also make this argument, that slavery is the root of economic inequality between black Americans and white Americans. And there is clearly and undoubtedly truth to the idea that economic history impacts economic present. Obviously, history always affects the present. Such history can mostly be seen in statistics like the wealth gap, which of course measures accrual of wealth over the course of decades. And so, naturally, redlining in 1960, racist policy in 1960, can have effects on inheritance in 1980, which have effects on wealth ownership in 2019. Of course, that's true. But the continuation of income disparity among races in the United States is today overwhelmingly not the result of racism, Jim Crow, or slavery. Income mobility and disparity is a statistic that should worry us. Honestly, Honestly, I'm more than happy to have this person ask a question, but this is now the 4th time that we've been interrupted during the speech. Sir, if you can't at least sit down and be respectful to the other, 1,500 people in the room, then get up and leave.
What's funny about all this is black Americans were actually largely doing better when America was supposedly more a racist country, at least at the later end of it. Take the 1960s, for instance, back when, you had Jim Crow and then the Civil Rights Act was passed eventually. Back then, about approximately 1 in 4 black people were living in a single parenthood household. Now, that number has gotten to 3 out of 4 black kids grow up in a single parent home, usually fatherless. Think about that. That is insane. It's not like America got more racist in the past 70 years. We all know that didn't happen. So what went wrong? Well, if you take the left's logic on it, racism. That's the only reason why black people are doing badly economically and with single parenthood and crime and all that stuff is because of racism. Really? Then how do you explain America getting more and more inclusive, or whatever you want to call it, and that result? It doesn't square up.
I'm simply not going to continue this nonsense until this person leaves, frankly. I'm sorry, I can't continue. This is silly.
Oop, getting kicked out. Let's go.
I appreciate it. Honestly, that's too bad because you heard it. I offered multiple times for him to ask the very first question. I'm more than happy to talk about the points. I'm not more than happy to have someone disrupt the speech for 1,500 other people because he can't keep his mouth shut so long as the speech continues. Now listen, slavery has been a feature of societies across time and place. Freedom is what makes America unique, not slavery. We are a country based on freedom, not on slavery.
Well, that was quite the spectacle right there. I don't know about you guys, but that guy had it easy, okay? I'm just saying, if we had some kind of right-winger going to a leftist event, they wouldn't have to be disrupted. All they had to do is, wear a MAGA hat, and they would have had a much worse thing happen to them than just simply being walked out by, some police officer. I'm just saying, we treat these people pretty nicely. I don't know. Should we? Just kidding. Just kidding. We respect everybody. We love everybody, of course. And with that being said, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. As always, please be sure to comment below. Let us know what you like about the clip, what kind of stuff you want to see in the future, and we'll see you all again soon. God bless.